The essential characteristic of being agile is the feedback loop. So what is a feedback loop? First, you have some well-defined mechanism to demonstrate what progress has been made. That is what makes it feedback. Second, the end of every feedback loop marks the start of the next one. That's what makes it a loop. If you are doing agile, you are always making sure you are in a feedback loop. You are pushing to make those feedback loops as short as possible. You have a bunch of different types of feedback loops nested within each other, like a Matryoshka doll or a Russian nesting doll. Each inner feedback loop is driven top-down from its outer feedback loop, so that every time you complete an inner feedback loop, you are one step closer to completing an outer feedback loop. Within the same level of feedback loops, the start of each feedback loop is driven from the end of the previous one, again in top-down fashion. If you are not doing this, you are not being agile. Let's have a look at the typical feedback loop you might find yourself in. At the outermost layer, we have the release, where the product is deployed to production and feedback comes from the customer. This feedback is usually relayed by the product owner or marketing. If the release is longer than 3 months away, you're going to want to work with the product owner to see if the priorities can be switched around so that we can be delivering some subset of value to the customer earlier. Within the release loop, we have the iteration. This is where the product owner demos the current capabilities to the stakeholders. This should not take longer than 2 weeks. Next up is the story loop. This starts with the product owner demonstrating how the application works now and defining how it should work. From this, demo instructions can be derived. As coding for each story is completed during the iteration, engineers are going to walk through the demo instructions with the product owner to make sure everybody is on the same page regarding expectation. In the demo loop, the engineer is going to make incremental progress towards getting the demo instructions working. For example, say the story is to serve some content from a web application that does not exist yet. First, the engineer is going to navigate to the appropriate URL and find it does not work because there's no server running. After getting the server running, it blows up because there's no request handler. After implementing the request handler, we discover there is no dispatch. After getting dispatch working, we end up with an empty page because there's no content, and so on until everything works. The point is that we are moving in a top-down fashion and continually dropping down to faster red-green refactor loops. In the red-green refactor loop, we measure progress by adding more and more succeeding tests and getting back to a state where all tests succeed after refactoring. You should strive to get your typical red-green refactor loop to around 10 minutes or less. At the top-down coding level, the time scale is at seconds rather than minutes. Each failing test indicates what we should be working on next. To address where the current test is failing, we act as if what we need already exists and give it a name. Your IDE works with the compiler to highlight what needs to be created next, and so on until you have no more compiler errors. Eventually, this entire stack will unwind. You will get something compiling that will address the current reason the test was failing, that will get the current test passing. The demo instructions will start succeeding, so now it can be demoed to the product owner, who can then demo it to the stakeholders, and finally, the product will be ready to be released to our customers.